I want us to get some practice with these semi-tricky private VLAN commands. Semi-long-winded is more like it. And also the associations and the mappings we need to make in a config. So here's what we're going to do in this video. You might want to write these down because once I bring the live equipment up, we're not coming back to the screen. VLAN 100 is going to be a secondary private VLAN, community style, and the ports we're going to put into it at the very end of the video are Fast Ethernet 0/1 through 5. VLAN 200 is a secondary private VLAN as well, but it's an isolated one, and we're going to put ports 6 through 10 in there. VLAN 300 is our primary private VLAN, and the router is found off Fast Ethernet 0/12, so we know what kind of port that's got to be, right? Let's go ahead and dive right in. I'll bring the live equipment up. Move something else here, and there we go. First off, we need our VLANs, 100, 200, and 300, and then we'll define what kind of private VLAN they're going to be along the way. And here are the options for that. Association, we're going to use that in a few minutes, but community, isolated, primary are the ones we're looking at right now. This one, 100, was going to be a community one. And we have our first hiccup. This can complicate the use of private VLANs in your network because private VLANs can only be configured when VTP is in transparent/off mode. And what we'll do is make a VTP domain. Even if you're not running it, you got to activate it and then put it in transparent mode. Transp. There we go. And now let's try going into VLAN config mode, private VLAN community. And there we go, no errors at all. 200 is going to be isolated. And 300 is going to be misspelled, and then it's going to be our primary. Now we need to do something else here on the primary. We need to make this association. That's where the association comes in. This isn't the mapping I talked about in the previous video. We're going to see a mapping here later as well. Sounds like I'm picking nits there, but I'm really not. This is an association. And what you need here, the wording is a little tricky of the private VLANs to be configured. You need to list your secondaries here that are associated with this primary, and that's going to be 200 and 100. Doesn't matter what order you put them in. And already, we've accomplished a lot. First off, we configured VTP to run in transparent mode. That was the most important thing because without that, nothing else is getting done. We've created our secondary private VLANs, both isolated and community. We've created our primary private VLAN, and we just created an association between the secondary and the primary private VLANs. So now we're going to go out to /12, port 12, and make that what kind of port? A promiscuous port. Switch port mode, then private VLAN. I put emphasis on mode there for a reason, as you'll see in a moment. And this is promiscuous. I could have just put prom, but I wanted to see if I could spell promiscuous. Oh, got it right. Now watch this next command because this is the mapping you need, and where this command was switch port mode private VLAN, this one begins with switch port private VLAN, and there's our mapping. It can drive you a little nuts at times. So we've got mapping, and now we need to put our primary VLAN in, which was 300. And we are mapping 200 and 100 to that. We're saying 300 is the primary for the secondaries, 100 and 200. Again, doesn't matter. The order that you put them in there doesn't matter. So now we've got our mapping and we've defined our promiscuous port. We're almost there. Now I want to use my interface range command to configure all these ports at one time. Switch port mode, private VLAN, host. These are my host ports. I also need to create an association here. Switch port private VLAN. Now I need my host association, then my primary VLAN, and then secondary VLAN. Then the secondary VLAN these are in is 100. Whew! That's quite a command. Switchport private VLAN host association 300, 100. But the study of logic in your previous studies really helps you out here, because if you look at this as a whole, it looks really complex, but you do see the logic to it as you go along. Let's go ahead and get into another range, interface range fast 0, 6 through 10. And again, we need the switchport mode private VLAN host command. And then we need that association, but of course we're associating this one. Our primary is still 300, but our secondary for these ports is 200. And that's it, believe it or not. Again, you have to get used to the vocabulary, if you will, the terminology, and then you've got some associations to create, some mappings to create. But once you do it a couple times, you will be perfectly fine. Private VLAN is not something you use in every network, but they do come in great handy every once in a while. Speaking of something that does come in handy in every network, it's actually DHCP. We're going to do a slight DHCP review and then talk about DHCP and switch security. So yes, there is a reason DHCP is coming up next. It does tie into network security, and we'll start that section next.